It has been some time since I have read a manga and been emotionally steamrolled over and over again, but that is exactly what happened when I was reading this manga. Hello friends, happy Friday. So very excited that you're here. Not only am I not only am I reviewing the first shoujo manga out of 3 that won my shoujo event. Check out the video here if you're curious and want to hear more about that, as well what the other winners are. But this is my 100th video review of manga on my channel. Yay! I am so very excited. I was gonna do one of the other winners to be the 100th review, but then I got this from the library and I just felt determined to read it, especially since everybody was right. Everybody was right in saying that, Laura, you're gonna need tissues. This is gonna break your heart. Though it put my heart back together, thankfully. I'm really thankful. And also, before I keep going, if you're curious about all the reviews that I have on this channel, I did a video, or I did a video, excuse me, highlighting all of the reviews that I've done. Jumping right back into today's manga review, I read volumes 1 through 10 of Chronicles. Oh my goodness, y'all. There was not enough tissues that I felt like virtually were sent to me for when I read this series. I'm so glad that I had the determination to just go ahead and read it, because my heart, I mean, if it wasn't bracing itself a little bit, I think I would have been even more emotionally wrecked when reading this series, because it was a lot. This series really is not for the faint of heart, and I was slightly offended when I had been leaving reviews on Goodreads of this series, and people during the earlier part of the series, they're like, it's so cute, and I'm like, y'all, is nobody else having their heart broken? Because this right here, volume 5, right? Yeah, volume 5, oh my goodness, that is when I started sobbing, and I honestly felt like just sobbing just continued through the rest of the series, really. I don't think I cried in this one, but I know I was starting to cry in this one, and then in volume 8, for sure. This volume specifically was a sob fest. I cried so much, and I'm so glad I didn't scare my kids or anything, because my husband was gonna give me a hug and he's like, oh, you're sniffling, you sick or something? I'm like, no, I've just been crying. I've just been crying. But thankfully I did not cry in volume 9 or volume 10. I love this cover so much. It is my favorite cover of the entire series. So very, very beautiful. Yeah, I read it, y'all. I read it, and it was, like I said, it is not for the faint of heart. It is a very powerful, very strong series, and I try and always, well, I don't say I try, I usually always, I can't even show it all, but I always pray before I film my video reviews, and I pray that the words will come, that I can like do a great job reflecting the series, conveying my thoughts, spoiler free, of just how the series impacted me. This past week, I've dealt with 3 days of insomnia, and then I had stomach issues this morning, and before that, my mom was hospitalized for double pneumonia because she had been sick since the end of May, so it was like 2 to 3 weeks. She'd been on antibiotics, and she literally just kept getting worse, and so she got hospitalized. It was really stressful, and so I did take a breather from reading this series. I think I read volumes 1 and 2, and then I like paused because I didn't have the right mindset, and then the day before my mom came back home, I binge read volumes 3 through 8. I had a lot of people tell me, like, you know, you're gonna want to take your time when reading this, and I think overall that's pretty true, but it was just so emotionally, I was so emotionally invested. I would say it was so emotionally much, and it is much, big much, but with how invested I was, I just felt like I could not stop. Like, my heart was so in this, and it was just like, I need to know how this story is going to unfold, and I'm just going to power through. It wasn't like a purposeful, I'm going to push myself, because I'll admit, when it came at the end of volume 7, I had to stop for a few hours. I could not just, before that, I had spent almost all that day just reading, but at the end of volume 7, I'm like, I feel a lot of emotions right now, and I'm like, I need a breather, and my daughter's like, you want to play some Minecraft, Mom? I'm like, let's play some Minecraft. So that is what we did. It was nice. It gave me a chance to sort of get my bearings back, I guess you would say, and then be able to dive back into the series. But in case if you're like me and you didn't know what this series is about, I mean, I've seen it around, I've heard a lot of great things about it, but I really didn't know anything about it. Well, it's about our main girl here. Her name is Anne. At the beginning of the series, she is 12 years old, and she is with her divorced mother. They were living in Tokyo, and they decided decide to go back to her mother's hometown. I forget the name of the city, but it is out in the boonies, basically. It is a very small, very, I don't know if private's the right word, but it's a very close-knit community. Anne is really struggling with how city life was to everybody's saying hello, everybody knows your business, and just everybody's involved. She was not used to that, and she really didn't like it at all. She didn't want to be there. She wanted to go back to Tokyo with her mom, but her mom basically decided to come back because she had been sort of in and out of the hospital a little bit due to being overworked. So I think she was coming back home to sort of rest and just rest, ultimately. I was trying to think sleep. Like, no, she needed rest, not just sleep. And tragedy strikes, unfortunately, sometime in this first volume. Anne comes to realize how special this close-knit community is to her. She makes 4 new friends, which they are 3. There's a total of 4 of them, but 3 new friends. And this is Fuji, Shika, and I hope I say his name. I kept saying Daigo, and I don't think that's correct. It's Daigo. They become very, very close, but these 2, our main girl and this guy here, I gotta come up with a nickname for him so I can say his name, but they form a relationship. And so this is, I'm hesitant to use the term slice of life. I read a review and somebody called it a slice of life, and it is, but I feel like not in the traditional sense. Typically when we say slice of life series, we mean the chapters are not interconnected. There's not much of a plot. You basically have these characters or a character that you're just following their everyday life, and it's just a variety of slice of life things. That's what it is. But this series really is a slice of life in the sense you're seeing Anne from the age of 12 at the beginning all the way to her being age 30 in the final volume. That was very refreshing to read a series like that, or like this, excuse me. I feel it was a lot in the sense that the tragedy that strikes is so incredibly heartbreaking in this first volume. I know going into volume 2, because I loved the first volume, I felt it was very engaging, especially when Anne's beating up this guy at the beginning. I was like, girl, I'm here for you. You're awesome. Especially since she was a city girl. But I felt so pulled in to Anne's emotions. They just jump off page. And I feel like even if you're not wanting to be connected to her, like even like on a personal level or just as a reader, you're going to feel connected. You're going to want to know more about Anne's life, how she's feeling. Her emotions really come out and grip your heart. And it really was like that the entire series. Sometimes I felt a lot more emotionally invested, and I do feel like as the series goes on, there is so much angst, but it's very different than what I would compare like angst in Iosaki Saka. The problems in this series, not saying Iosaki Saka's manga doesn't have real life problems, but with how Anne is and how she's dealing with this trauma and this heartache, and she's trying to become stronger, I felt a lot of relatability at different times. And I'll admit that's why I had to put the book on pause when my mom was in the hospital, because I was just like, I can't handle what Anne is going through in this story and handle what I'm really going through, considering my mom really being in the hospital. It was just too much for me. I'm glad I came back. Not that I was going to quit, but I was a little afraid, because sometimes like when I go to start a series, I want to try and read it all if I have it available, which I did. I had all volumes 1 through 10 right at hand. So I like to like just push through, read it all at once so that I can get the full scope of the story. And so me not being able to do that and having to take like a 2-3 day break, I was really afraid. And I'm like, no, that was not the case. The more I kept reading, the more I just felt so wrapped up and so caught up in what was Anne going to do, because you can really see like how at first in volume 1 the tragedy happens, and it's sort of like she gets her feet back under her and she's able to see hope in life again. But then she gets this person that comes into her life, and it's like, oh no, I have lost my bearings, and life becomes so much different than what it was before. And my heart really went out to her and her boyfriend. Wow, I commend him for how he stood by Anne's side, of how he did not discourage her or encourage her. I'm trying to keep it spoiler free here, in a choice that ultimately, yes, would deeply affect their relationship and them going forward and them having a successful relationship, because more or less it ends up with them being a long-term relationship. I mean, yes, they can work, but they're hard. They're really hard. And so I feel like being a teenager, if I was in his shoes, I would beg Anne not to leave, because because she ends up going back to Tokyo for a reason. I would have just begged her to stay. Like, don't go. Don't go. And I know that's selfish. I feel bad that it is, but he did not encourage her to go, and he didn't discourage her to go. He really left the decision in her hands to make her make that decision for her own well-being. And I was like, dude, you guys are so mature. Like, I would not be like this, period. Sometimes, especially going into like volume, I think 3 was really good. Volume 4, though, I know I gave this 3-star rating on Goodreads. I feel bad. I shouldn't, because it was, some people say, Laura, you're just being petty, but I didn't like the decisions that were being made. And I was so emotionally like frazzled because I didn't know what was going to happen. I'm like, no, no, and no. And it left me so worried because these characters really make realistic decisions. Like, it doesn't feel like they're just making decisions for a sake of a plot to move forward. They feel like real people with real struggles, with real trauma, with times, I think it was in volume 3, because it involved a certain character where characters are jealous and they do obviously dumb things, but like Fuji, for example, where Fuji at? Fuji's somewhere on here, but he makes a decision and I'm like, Fuji, what are you doing? What are you doing? I was like so upset at these characters, but it made it so engaging to read. And I typically don't like angst, and I will say at the end of volume 3, because that is when, I'm pretty sure that's when Fuji did something Yes, it was. It was at the end of volume 3, I believe it. No, it doesn't. Okay, at the end of one of these volumes, though, Fuji makes a decision. I felt so much. I lost my train of thought, but look how happy he looks here, too. This volume is, I really feel like, was sort of I actually don't know which volume it was, but the more I read, I feel like in the beginning, I was very invested when it came to the romance. Maybe that sounds really shallow because I know this story is more than just a romance, and it definitely is, but I felt very caught up in what was going on because they're childhood friends, like all 4 of them. So seeing one childhood friend say something and then another person say something, and seeing Anne really just fight for her relationship in a way, it was a lot for childhood friends. And I'm like, this is pretty angsty, but it felt very different. Volume 5, and I mentioned that already, but volume 5, I just felt like this was the ultimate beginning of heartbreak. Volume 5, going to volume 6, that's when things changed for me, where I'm like, okay, I'm not loving a certain character's actions. My heart is really going out to Anne because you feel her fear. You feel her worry. And I commend the manga creator so much in this volume. There is a character, her name is Shika. She's one of the best friends. She conveys a dream that she has to Anne. It's about Shika. It's about her fears and her worries. But the way that it manifested in seeing Anne's worries and Anne's struggles, even though that wasn't even her dream at first, she hadn't even thought about seeing life the way that Shika was talking about. But that dream, that whole conversation that Anne and Shika had, it's like it brought Anne's fears to life in a different way. And I thought that was incredible storytelling because there was nothing that was told. It was all just shown of how Anne is realizing this fear that she has of she's not wanting to hurt her boyfriend, but she's got to make an ultimate decision. And hearing Shika share, she realizes what's lurking in her heart. And it's like, that was her moment that I don't know, how would I finish that statement? I wanted things to be so different that I cried. I cried so hard. It was so emotional. And you go into volume 6 and I was just like, the happiness on this cover just broke my heart because it's not conveyed in this volume the same. You really see how hurting Anne is, how the tragedy from her past, of how she may have been masking it. She might have thought it was gone. She might have thought that she had moved on and healed, though I don't think she actually ever felt she moved on. I retract that statement because there's times, I think it was in this volume, where she's saying everybody's sort of moved on but me. I wanted to just reach out and hug her. And it was just like, that's where things sort of went downhill. And I remember saying in my review of this volume, I feel we're getting to the end, that it's close, but we still have 4 volumes to go. There is a reason for that. And I think me feeling like that, where I was like, how in the world are we going to fill 4 volumes when it's feeling like this? Because the creator actually mentions that volume 8 was actually the final volume for the story. And then there's 2 extra bonus volumes, 9 and 10, that are sort of not fully fully related to the main story. They're just bonus stories, more or less. But volume 7, the end of this volume was so scary and it was terrifying. I have not felt so much anxiousness for a character in a really long time, where I honestly felt really depressed. I felt so much hopelessness up to this point, even though Anne is struggling, even though she's trying so hard to find happiness. She's working so hard to be this strong woman that everybody's telling her that she should be. She's trying to be what people have told her mom, that all of these things have been building up. They've been piling up. And Anne is just feeling like a broken and lost human. It just makes me emotional thinking about it now, because I was so scared for her. I was like, I don't know where this story's going. I was like, I wish I could pray for her right now. I, again, was terrified at the end of this volume, and I was literally scared to move on, because I'm like, I don't like how this volume's ending. I don't like how, when there had felt like there was hope and that they're talking about a star in the sky and how, you know, there's people there for you, Anne just felt so alone. And I was like, creator, you have broken my heart almost every volume, especially from volume 5 onward. You have broken my heart every volume. Are we going to end on this kind of note where I'm just depressed? And I'm like, has everybody that's been telling me this is so good have lied to me? Because I'm like, how are these people this strong and able to handle this? Because I'm like, I can't handle this right now. I cannot handle it. I get into volume 8. My whole heart was put back together, and I sobbed so many times, at least three. And I will just say, I'm going to talk about some quotes because I want to do this video a little bit differently. Usually I don't do this, and I keep a reading journal and I write quotes at the end of the month from books that I've read. But there were so many quotes that I wanted to share and I wanted to talk about that I was going to read them after I talked about these volumes. Took so many pictures when I was reading this because it was so beautiful, and the creator really just stitched my heart back together, and you could see where hope is shining the brightest and the most beautifulest, and there's so much heartache and there's pain, but there's healing and there's hope and there's forgiveness, and it was the most satisfying thing. I mean, the ending was beautiful when it came to certain things. I said thank you, Monica, for that. Thank you. But it was Anne's ultimate journey of healing that was the most satisfying thing in this story, period. I was so thankful for her that she found a strength, not a strength that came from physically working harder, not a strength that came from being a certain way, acting a certain way. No, it was a strength from forgiving a certain person where her life felt at genuine peace, and that she could genuinely smile and not feel like she was covering up her pain or any of that. One thing I do want to really say is at the beginning of the series, when it came to her grandma, and her grandma's yelling at her mom, and she says, you need to straighten up. You need to straighten up. You need to be stronger. You need to get off your feet, or you get off your bum, basically, and work harder, be harder, do harder. Things happen throughout the series, and it comes out of this volume. There's a scene with her grandma. It's between Anne and her grandma's like, straighten up. In that moment, I think like, Grandma, are you about to say what you told her mom? And she doesn't though. She says, you're not alone. There's a lot of great lines, a lot of great quotes in this series, in this volume specifically. But that quote from her grandma, it made me cry the hardest because it just showed the impact of what happened to the grandma personally, of the tragedy that struck, but that ultimately I feel like this series is one that reminds every reader that life, yeah, it can be really hard. It can be overwhelmingly hard and full of heartbreak and pain and heartache, and the things that you thought would happen don't happen, and the dreams you have, they don't come into be what you had hoped they would. You are still not alone. As Anne says, there's a moment she says, I'm not going to give up. Don't give up. There's people who love you, people who care for you, and that when you're hurting and when you're in pain, go to those people, tell them, reveal those broken parts of yourself, because those people who love you, who genuinely care for your well-being and want nothing but the best for you, they're going to hear you. They're not going to judge you because you're not strong, because you feel weak. No, they're going to comfort you and remind you that you're not alone, that they're in this journey with you. And I'm so glad at the end of this story that Anne saw that for herself, that she's not alone, and that life is a precious and beautiful thing. I feel like the name of this series, Sand Chronicles, is one of the most fitting titles it could. The way that sand and, oh gosh, I can't even think what it's called, but the thing that you flip over, I am blanking on what it is called, y'all, right now. Let me show you so I can use my words. This right here. This right here. I am blanking on what it's called right now. But the way that it played a huge role in this series was so meaningful. And I really feel like this series makes you reflect. There was definitely a time, I don't remember if it was volume 3 or volume 4, but something was said, and I'll read that quote too. It made me wish that the mangaka was still here with us today, and that we could just remind her of the powerful things that she wrote in this series to encourage, I hope, other people, to encourage herself, I hope as well, that she's not alone, and that you can't tell somebody to work harder when they're giving their all, when they're already working super hard, that if you need rest, if you need a break, to take that. Like, I wish somebody could have told her that they could have just wrapped their arms around her and pour love into her, because I really feel like for how hard it was to read this series, it felt just like such a letter of encouragement that, hey, hang in there, hold on to hope, don't let go, no matter how dark it may seem, you're not alone, and that there is always hope. It was a very powerful read. Shout out to everybody who voted for this series, shared about how great it was. I don't know if I would reread it again, because it was just so emotionally a lot for me compared to I usually read of fluffy things, but I definitely have no regrets of reading it, and I'm very thankful that I read it, because I hope that this series is one that sticks with me, reminds me in those moments where I am feeling very broken and I'm feeling like I've given my all and it doesn't feel enough, and that I can go to people and say, hey, I feel very weary, I feel very broken, and they're gonna be like, you know what, that's okay, I'm here for you. Let me help you carry your burdens. I will be here and stand with you. We will move forward together. A very powerful, multiple powerful messages and great friendships, even when they were hard and there were decisions being made. I'm like, oh my gosh, it was still very, very, very beautiful. And I read volumes 9 and 10. I'll be honest and say I was not a fan of volume 9. I think it's just because it gives us the backstory of the mom. And I really love seeing the guy, this one here, the one I can never say his name. I really love seeing his mom and whatnot. I just wasn't hugely invested in this. When it came to volume 10 though, this was the time, one of the time skips, and I really love this volume. I was really impacted. I love seeing where characters were and how really with how hard things were in this series, and the way that they viewed memories was very, very, very special. And I guess it'll be a great time to just go ahead and go into the quotes that I wrote down, because I know when I was writing them down last night, I was like, I know I don't want to talk about this, how it affected me. But I think, okay, I didn't write the specific quote down, but I know in volume 10, there's a moment where Anne is talking and she's like, I want all of the memories. I want the good memories, the sad memories, and I want to think over them over and over again and reflect on how they've made me be who I am today. I was so powerfully touched by that, because I will be honest, when it comes to Haikyuu, I always spell the name wrong, but it's the team that has the Mia twins, has Kita on there as well, and Suna. Their team banner is, we don't need the memories. And I actually wrote a devotional piece on this in I think it was the first Fine Gun anime devotional that me and my friend coordinated together a few years ago. And I talked about memories and whatnot, but I know for me personally, that has sort of been like something I have clung to, in the sense I really hate bad memories. Maybe that sounds really bad, but I don't like thinking about them, and I'm sure a lot of people don't. But I was totally shocked and taken aback that Anne would say that she would want to even keep those memories, that she would even want to reflect on those, because I'm like, when the memories be popping up, I'm like, just get out. Get out my brain. I don't want you. I don't have time for you. And I try and divert my attention so that I can't think about it. And so that was something that really spoke very powerfully to me of, maybe I could change my personal mindset of, those memories, when they're bad memories, that they don't have to consume me and getting caught up in those emotions of that time. Usually they're not very, I would say, good emotions or positive ones, but that I can be reflective of that, because those memories, those things that happened made me who I am today. And in volume 10, I really love that message that was woven in of, be happy with who you are today. Well, they don't say like that. Excuse me. They say, like who you are today, like who you are right now, because all of those memories have made you who you are, and you should be happy with who you are today. I just was very touched by that. I don't know if it's just because the characters are 30 and I'm like, well, I'm a little over 30. It may feel like when, especially reading shoujo, like majority of the time the characters are younger. And it was really cool to actually see the leads grow up from age 12 to going to 30. That was awesome. I love that. That was great. That was really cool. I feel like these characters were speaking to me personally almost of that. You can still change things right now where you're at. You can still see what can I do to like the person I am now. Like everything's not over when, you know, you suddenly are not in high school anymore, or you're not the same age of a shoujo heroine lead who's like 16 or 18 and living her best life. Like, no, you can still live your best life even when you're not that age anymore, even when you're older. And there was a much older character. She was just sort of poured into of like, you can still live the life that you want and still like who you are. So it was very, very powerful. Again, multiple fantastic messages. And I will just say that these are the quotes that I have. And I'm like, okay, I still am not even halfway through the month. And I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to get any more quotes really on here. We're going to go rewind. I know I talked about all of the volumes, or maybe I should just choose what my favorite ones were. I guess talking about memories, one of them was from volume 8. And I don't remember who said it, but they said, growing old means more memories. You're made up of this memory and that memory, and others too. It would be a waste to forget them. Also in volume 8, when Anne says, when I think about that, I see how precious my life is. I guess to close it, I know I didn't say all the other ones, but I think to close it up for this review is this was a quote from Miss Koda, who was a teacher of Fuji and the other guy when they were second grade, maybe third grade. And she tells them, the life you choose is up to you. Just make sure you become someone that you like. Don't ever lie to yourself or hide from the truth. Have faith in yourself. Be authentic. I think that really wraps up this series of be authentic. Don't hide from the truth. I know at the very beginning, the one guy, he says you shouldn't break something that's important to you. Don't ever try to erase your most important feelings. It may be hard to acknowledge those feelings and work through those feelings, but they are valid, and don't just break it because of feeling overwhelming hurt or of something along those lines. Like, no, don't, like says, don't ever try to erase your most important feelings. Don't lie to yourself. Don't try and hide from the truth or erase the truth. This truly was a very precious read. And again, I'm thankful that it won in the shoujo event. Thank you to everybody who voted. I really hope I was able to convey how powerful this series is, but you need to brace yourself and prepare that you're probably going to cry. And if you don't cry, just prepare to be deeply emotionally moved. It's got a little bit of fluff. It definitely has a little bit of humor at times, but there is so much heart and heartache and heartbreak. But the way that hope shines, I guarantee that by the end, if you read it from volumes at least 1 through 8, that by the end, that you're going to see like, man, life may be hard, but I'm not alone. There is always hope. You don't have to just push forward for the sake of pushing forward, but that people will help you to, you know, work through struggles that you may have and future struggles, and past memories. People are there, that you are loved, you are cared for, and you are treasured. You were treasured. You're not alone. So I hope that you enjoyed watching this. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And I would love to know if you've read this series and what you thought of it. So I hope you have a great day. And again, thank you so much for watching. Bye!